Recording to the cloud for a second time, part 2, week 13, R622, the greatest week in the world because we have 2 guests this week. Actually, we have 3 with something to do joining us. So we have expertise all around us. Maybe I'm going to help too. So 4 people are guiding you tonight. Sanjaya Mishra, my great friend and colleague from the Commonwealth of Learning, what's called COL.org, is going to tell us about the new report that just came out on smart learning environments that they published. And if you, Sanjaya, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you. Greetings to everyone, wherever you are. Song, greetings to you too. Thanks for everyone for joining in. I'm Sanjaya Mishra. I work for the Commonwealth of Learning. It's an intergovernmental organization established by the Commonwealth Heads of Government, established in 1987 with headquarters in Vancouver. We work with governments and educational institutions to help them use distance and technology-enabled learning to increase access to education, improve quality of education at different levels, primarily from secondary education to tertiary education, vocational education, and of course, teacher training forms a very central part for all the activities that we do. So that's in brief. We do lots of things, and I was hearing to the previous presentations, and few things I picked up and from there. And one of the things I really liked was about the having no plan. So basically, today we don't have a plan or a structure as such, but I will be talking about the recent publication that we brought in with the UNESCO Institute of Information Technology in Education and Beijing Normal University, China. So I'll be talking a little bit about that on smart education strategies and policies and what we have done. Beyond that, we will be talking about, in general, things on learning, things on smart education, and any other thing that you would like to under the sun of educational technology. But before I go into those things, I was hearing Som, and we have been working together for a long time. And one of the critical components that we always emphasize together is what is our role as educators. And we both agree on that our role is optimizing the learning experiences of our students. And that's how Som brings in his designing learning experience design perspective. And I have always been, and one thing Professor Kurt talked about what do? We are present to a situation and then we do things. And I'm an example of that. I have been into different places, different jobs, moved from my teaching career to an international development career in education. But the most important part that when I look at the education, I don't categorize myself into one kind of thinking or one kind of philosophical approach. I look myself what talked about mostly eclectic approach. I think when you take an eclectic approach, you are trying to help a holistic learner. So those are my philosophical background and things of those things that I thought I should talk as a preamble for giving you a background to discussion.
The reason you had to preamble, because I was not smart. I went downstairs and I grabbed some seeds, some salty seeds, and one got stuck in my throat while I was trying to introduce you. So I couldn't properly introduce you. So Sanjay has been in Delhi, where he marked papers at the Indira Gandhi Open University, National Open University, IGNU. When he moved to Paris, working for UNESCO, and then he went to Vancouver, now working for the Commonwealth of Learning. We often hear about UNESCO and we all pay homage to it, but you probably rarely have met someone who's authored reports for UNESCO and know the ins and outs about what UNESCO is interested in today or tomorrow, what they might be interested in. You probably not met too many people in the field of educational technology who have authored many books like Sanjaya has. So he's been both in the academic space, teaching and authoring books and doing much service, as well as in the nonprofit space out there helping as well. So he's got his lenses that he can wear are of different types and shapes and sizes of what he can offer us in his views on the field, including how he might define what smart learning environments mean to him, or what they are today, and what they might look like in the future. He can also talk about the free resources provided by the Commonwealth of Learning, which includes my new free book on motivation and supporting online learners based on the Tech Variety free book. So he's the director of education for the Commonwealth of Learning. Give him a round of applause. This is a relatively recent promotion, maybe a year ago or so, maybe not quite. Maybe is it a year ago by now that you were promoted?
Yes, it was in January last.
Yeah, so not even a year ago. So this year, 2022, is a big year for Sanjaya, because some people are on contracted work at the Commonwealth of Learning and stay only 3 years and then move on to somewhere else. So with this position, I think he can stay a longer period of time, and you can visit him in Vancouver and have a chat with him sometime if you do go visit. I sent you his bio. He has a chapter in both of my MOOCs books, MOOCs and Open Ed Around the World, MOOCs and Open Ed in the Global South. I think he has 2 chapters in one of the books, in fact. One where he's talking about MOOCs for development and with his colleague Balaji there, and one with his the president, CEO of the Commonwealth of Learning, Ashok Kanwar, where he talks about different aspects of what COL is doing in terms of MOOCs. He's been creating MOOCs to train teachers and been very much involved in professional development of teachers in the former British colonies, whether it's Jamaica or Bangladesh or India or Malaysia or some other, the Bahamas, some other place around the world. So he's really interested in ramping people up for this online learning space, and it got kicked into high gear during the pandemic. And so one of the places that was the shining light for the world and getting support to train teachers who want to learn how to teach online was the Commonwealth of Learning. They've done a great service out there, but also contact. So they're in British Columbia, Contact North in the other part of Canada, in Ontario, which also have provided free webinars and trainings and so forth. So there's a lot of things happening in Canada once again that's helping the world out. And that was the case in the early days of the web. In the 1990s, the Canadians were way ahead, and Sam was in Concordia, a little before that, in fact, in Montreal area. So Canada is a place and a space that has been leading the way, along with the Australians, where Sam is now. Australia and Canada, and maybe the UK to some degree, have been kind of taking a leadership role in this new age of digitally enhanced learning. And you've got your unique perspective on that, Sanjay. Even though I wasn't going to talk about this, do you want to discuss where you see leadership in the field happening and who people might want to be reading about in this field?
Yes, Kurt. I hope you have downloaded this book that was shared by Kurt. So this is the book that came recently.
Our article number 2 this week in your syllabi, and if you download the new syllabi, and it's in Dropbox, so yeah. Do download it.
So that's the book, and there are many others. If you want to see more resources, then you need to go to COL's institutional repository, which is OASIS. I'm just typing col.org. So you will find all the publications, including the latest publication and presentations from Commonwealth of Learning. And most of these resources are available with an open license. meaning that you can reuse it for your own purposes with due attribution, and you can also share. We have recently also started a new platform called callcommons.org, on which you will find the course that was developed by Eileen and Kurt, and it's a motivating and supporting online learners. So a lot of resources available from the Commonwealth of Learning. We work in the 54 Commonwealth countries, actually 56 now. 2 new members have joined recently, the Commonwealth family. So
who joined?
two new countries joined. Gabon
Congo?
and Togo.
Okay.
From Africa.
Yeah.
So now we are now 56 countries in the Commonwealth. We work in those countries. And of course, New Zealand, Australia, UK and Canada are the big players, and India and South Africa and Nigeria followed by those countries. So, but those are the kind of institutional perspective. And we also are running a MOOC on leading change in teaching and learning in the digital world. It's just completing. It's actually completed last week, and we have just given the current week an extension period for the learners. We have over 1,000 learners on that, and this is a course particularly to help people develop, think about leadership skills. And we are of the leadership is not a position, and everyone could be a leader in their own way. The way you conduct yourself and the way you influence others in your sphere of influence, you become a leader. And at some point of time, you get into a position where you may be considered as leader, but you might have already exhibited those leadership skills. And one of the things that I have been doing in this MOOC as taking one session on defining your own leadership traits, or identifying your own leadership signature for digital learning. And I take the participants in the MOOC through that journey of how do they identify their own leadership approach. There is no style or kind of things, but what do they do in terms of leadership, what they can do, and how they can measure their own approaches and think about their strengths and weaknesses, and work in order to implement the change they want to do. So leadership is all about change that we want to bring in. Now, how do we approach those change? How much time it takes to bring in change, and some change could be quick, like things that happen, rapid transition to online learning. A new terminology evolved overnight on remote teaching, emergency remote teaching, and so these changes happened quickly. It didn't required a lot of efforts because it was an external push. Whereas person like me, we have been working for years to make distance education, popularized distance education, online learning, blended learning, and of course, open educational resources. The uptake was not so good before the pandemic happened. So change happens because of different things. So, and it takes different amount of time to happen. So having said those kind of things, I want to quickly take you through so that you can have more questions. I in this kind of meetings, I really like more questioning rather than having a talk. So I will quickly go through a couple of slides from one of my last presentation I did for a group in China on smart education. I'll reuse that slide deck and to highlight a couple of things from the report so that you take the summary of those reports quickly, but including the definition that we want to promote on smart education. Is that okay?
That's okay. I want to point out that I met Sanjay in 2008 at the eLearn Free Conference Symposia, and he was a participant in that, and we created a book from that. I want you to guess on one thing that's similar between, we're brothers, we're twin sons of different mothers. I want you to guess on one thing that we're very similar in, and the person who guesses it will get $1 million. So in the chat window, just guess what links us together in a very important way, a very unique way, in a very important way. And so you go ahead while Sanjay is putting a slide. You can put it in the chat window, your guesses. We'll see who comes close. Yep, we got those, Sanjay.
You get the full screen?
Yeah, you could hit full screen. It's not full screen, but it's close. It's close enough.
Okay.
There you go. There we got it.
Okay, I'll just now swap, take it a few slides. Now, I'm not going to present all the slides, so I want questions and interaction on different issues. Smart education for us is, it's not just digital education, that you bring technology into the classroom and it becomes smart education. So we are not going from that perspective. So, but we are looking into an integrating technology into classroom is definitely a perspective of in its own, but it's not just that by bringing technology, you will make classrooms smart, or by bringing smart boards into the classroom, you will make. So what we are looking at defining smart education as in, 5 E's. It should be enjoyable, it should be engaging, it should be efficient, it's effective, and it's ethical. And it's actually built upon some of the work on e-learning that we have been doing, and Som has been writing about 3 things: engaging, efficient, and effective learning as e-learning. That's one of the definitions that when Som and myself, we worked on a book, he talked about e-learning as engaging, efficient, and effective. And and smart education for us is that it should be also enjoyable. The learning as fun, the transfer of learning and retention of learning should not just be kind of a rote learning and burden, but the learner should also enjoy. Now, whether it is a student in the school or it's an adult learner in the university, the learning will happen when the learner is enjoying the learning process. That's the thing. And the last one that we are adding in the ethical dimension is that because of more and more technology getting into the classroom, technology, whether it is web-based technology or technology in the classroom, surveillance is becoming a key issue everywhere. Privacy, data protection of the students, and privacy of school children, because putting their images into different platforms, social media, how those things are getting used, everything needs to be ethically looked in from an ethical lens. So the education that is enjoyable, the education that makes engaging, you can use technologies for that. You may not use technologies and still you can make your classroom engaging. It's important that it's efficient, and therefore you need design. The designing learning experience is important because you need to make the learning process efficient. You need the student to spend least amount of time and get most benefit out of it. You don't want the student to read 300 pages to learn something which somebody can summarize and learn in 3 pages of information, or a 3-minute of video. So we need to make the learning process efficient and of course effective. This is something that we always talk about, that what technology is working or technology is not working, it is effective or not effective. It's mostly in the context of technology, but it is important to ask ourselves that is it effective just for the point of view of getting scores or achievement marks or grades or grade point average and GPA, or is it that something that the the smart education, leading the learners to have some certain skills, improving the learners' employability or earning capabilities, or helping the learner to become a global citizen for that matter. So it's an smart education is, to me individually, is an holistic approach that makes a well-rounded individual and help bigger questions of sustainable development goals and human rights, etc., that are being talked about by all of us in the context of broader humanity. So that's the kind of context that we look at. But technology definitely underpins most of these things that the philosophical, this definition that talks about technology underpins those things. For the framework, the report that we looked at, we were doing a scoping study from the existing literature and trying to see what is happening on the smart education area from different countries. And we want to synthesize those to create a framework which will help institutions and countries to adopt a systematic policy and strategy for smart education. And within that, when we analyzed, we present a framework which has different implementation mechanisms and 6 policy themes, with a vision and principles around it, so that when governments look into their policies, review their policies and practices, they look into these things, that it is having a policy framework which can be implemented. So we also provide an indicator to assess the implementation, so that there is also a monitoring and evaluation framework. Now, it's not just that a government will implement a policy or develop a policy framework and not implement it. So they will be also looking at, now we have a policy framework, how will you implement it? So those kind of things that we have looked into 10 countries, analyzed the existing literature, looked into the policy frameworks in the 10 different countries. Out of that, we have developed 15 case studies of different elements giving best practices from these the elements of a smart education policy framework. So and we have looked at the smart education policy implementation at different levels, coming from global frameworks, coming from UNESCO and other organizations, at a regional level, regional planning at a European framework, for example, or a national level covering different ministries, or dedicated to education policy and ministries, and looking into interministerial task force reports and so on and so forth. So we have looked into those things. The key important thing that we find in the report is that context matters. The individual country context is very important to look at. What is the human capital development in the context of COVID-19, learning loss, systemic inequalities in the countries, trends in technology use in the country, global edtech movement, issues related to ethics and cyber security. These are the kind of context whenever policies, strategies are being looked at in an institution or in a country. Context is very important. And first important thing, when we look at infrastructure, a lot of important things that came out during the process is that internet infrastructure, while it is growing, it is not ubiquitous. So what is important is that governments are making efforts to increase connectivity to help students and teachers have internet access. Many type of internet access is being looked at. One example is looking at zero-rated platforms. Now, the governments make through the internet service providers tell that these are the certain platforms which will be zero-rated. Some are providing free mobile SIM cards to students for internet access, and some are buying tablets, smartphones, computers, and distributing it to students. Smart classrooms are being institutionalized. important thing we saw is that electricity grid still plays a major role, and power is not, electrical power is not available also to schools to a large extent. The emerging issues that also came out was in the infrastructure was issues related to carbon emission and e-waste, particularly with the use of tablets, laptops, and smartphones, which are battery embedded or battery separately. These are lithium-ion batteries, which needs to be for safe disposal of those things. So e-waste is something that is getting more and more considered, along with the safety of the students, particularly children online and issues like that. The next policy theme that we looked at issues around curricular and pedagogy. More and more countries are looking now at competency-based curricula, lifelong learning implications. They're not just looking at sector level, but they're trying to look at a lifelong learning framework. More impact of artificial intelligence, how artificial AI is getting used for teaching and learning, and how datafication of teaching and learning is happening in that context. So that's the policy theme 2. The third is digital educational resources. We have emphasized a lot on open educational resources because we believe that's the way forward for a sustainable future of digital resources. While learning management systems will be more and more used, particularly in the blended online learning scenarios at different levels, the content will be an important part, and use of open educational resources plays a critical role in that digital education resource space. The fourth theme that we talk about, skills and competencies. So smart education need to look at skills and competencies for the fourth industrial revolution, or some people now talk about fifth industrial revolution. But we at Commonwealth Learning focus largely on digital education skills. And what we call a digital education is digital literacy plus. So digital literacy is not enough. It's not sufficient. We need to have skills, education skills, to use digital literacy better. So teacher capacities, the skills of teachers, preparing students. Many a time we believe that students coming to the universities today, they use smartphones, so they are very well prepared. They don't need any preparation for digital education skills. Our experience shows otherwise. Every student needs training on cybersecurity, digital footprint, understanding digital footprint, understanding digital identity, and safety on an online environment. More focus on STEM education in countries happening using digital tools and skills. And there is also how a recognition of micro credentials could help, particularly in the skills and competencies sector. And many countries, including New Zealand, Australia, are pumping in millions of dollars on these areas at this moment. The policy theme is about governance, particularly governing the smart education strategy itself, and focusing on funding models, focusing on what are the different types of funding models can happen, data protection policy act, cybersecurity, use of blockchain and others. While blockchain has been criticized a lot because of its energy emission issues, but still there are these are technologies which can probably help governance issues a lot and more systematically. A policy theme is administration and management, which is more about educational information management systems, particularly the kind of data collected at institutional level, at a national level. Quality assurance issues. So how do you assure quality of teaching and learning with digital technologies? What are the issues related to planning and management, digitization of resources? What formats you use so that you can preservation of information for posterity. Those are the kind of issues that we have looked at, and we have provided a template for development of policy, and we have also have a set of questions for guiding, monitoring, and evaluation kind of stuff. So that's in summary the report. It's a big report, and it is about 146 pages, including about 10 pages of references. We hope it will be useful to institutions and governments to make use of the resource to plan and implement policies and strategies well. Thank you.
So thank you for the Cliff Notes. So my students now have the Cliff Notes. They don't have to buy them in the bookstore. They can get the overview before they get into the article. That's very helpful because they're going to be discussing these articles for this week. Sunme has set us up in Canvas in groups, and so they all have a role. One person who has the role of the starting or introducing the articles will want to watch that clip and use that to introduce. We do have a question that went in the Jamboard right away. I don't know if there's more that joined that one, but there is 2 questions now in the Jamboard. First one was in yellow. So who had the first question in the Jamboard? Well, and by the way, again, what do Sanjaya and I have in common since we've met? What's one thing that we have in common since we met back in 2008? And it is not Christian's guess of the world being open. Sorry, Christian. So the possibilities are endless for winning $1 million. Who had the yellow question? No one's admitting to having a question. Who put a question in the Jamboard? Let's put it that way. We have a Jamboard here. It's right there.
I tried, but I don't think it worked.
So go ahead, Elliot.
I actually just wanted to ask what is included in your eclectic approach. I know you mentioned open educational resources, and what other components are part of that?
So Elliot, you have your camera you want to put on so Sanjaya can see who you are?
I'm sorry, not tonight, but
okay. Next time.
I promise I'll be back again though.
Yeah, go ahead, Sanjaya.
That's okay, Elliot. So thank you very much. That's a question on eclectic approach. I used that eclectic from my perspective as the theories of learning. So most of the time what happens, people get divided into what do you believe in? Are you a behaviorist, or are you a cognitivist, or are you a constructivist, and now are you a connectivist kind of stuff? These learning theories make us look at one as better than the other. I do not look at that in that way, and that's what I like about Kurt's introduction when it was talking about we're presented with things and we do those things. And I have seen that a more eclectic approach to theories of learning makes things or helps things to work. If you only look from one perspective of one theories of learning, you are not getting all the type of experiences that happen, or all the type of interest that happen. Even a simple learning management system can provide different types of opportunities for the learners. So you can create different types of things that something will appeal to somebody, something else will appeal to somebody else. So that's how we can design, and using, you can have a question and answer quiz, and we say that, okay, we are providing responses immediately, and it's a behavioristic framework. And somebody will say, I'll have a discussion forum, and therefore, I want people to reflect, engage with more, and decide on what they want to do. And then they look at a constructivist approach, constructing something, but you would also like to make a lot of learning materials available, ask students to reflect, discuss about those things, and relate. So a lot of different things to be done. That's one aspect of my eclectic approach. The other eclectic approach is that we try to do the thing right at the first. So we look at the holistic context. The context becomes important, the needs become important, and the outcome become important. When you are looking at from the context, needs, and outcome perspective, then you are looking at things that will work. You are not preconceived into one way of looking at things. So this is the way to do. So that's the second way. And the third way
Hang on a second, Sanjaya. So Sam's gonna have to leave, and so I want him to get on camera. Would you like to say goodbye, Sam, before you have to go, so we catch you on camera here? You're muted, Sam. You have to unmute. You're on, yeah.
Sanjay, thanks, Sanjay. Thank you very much. I gotta go now. I've been at it for a while, but thanks for the invitation. Enjoy, guys. Again, Kurt is my email. So if any one of you would like to ask me a question off the screen some other time, like Mike, I'm very happy to help and engage.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Sam.
Have a great week. So sorry, go ahead. The third way.
And the third is resources. Open, non-open. Now, while I'm an advocate of open educational resources. I allow eat, breathe, drink, sleep open educational resources. But I'm not kind of thing, no, this is the only way to go. No, if you do not have a good open educational resources, you need to depend on proprietary resources available. And most of the time what happens, you can make use in your class or on your teaching things, proprietary resources by asking permission. So it's easy. So, so those kind of three approaches that I looked at in my eclectic way of doing things, particularly in teaching and learning. I'm focused on teaching and learning. I may be more non-eclectic in personal life, but in teaching and learning, I want those things to happen.
So did anyone guess what we have in common with each other now? It's not that we both use our hands. But there is something we have in common since we met in 2008. Nobody's going to guess it. Okay. Other questions for Sanjaya?
There is another question on the Jamboard probably.
Yep, there is. And it's probably Christian's question. Christian?
So regarding ethics, if a smart education system begins to understand a learner better than they understand themselves, what should the instructor do with that information?
That's very interesting. At this moment, I think I'm yet to see such a system happening. There are a lot of efforts. There are a lot of systems that I have seen trying to gather huge amount of data and trying to build models and trying to predict learner success and so on and so forth. And the most important part in designing such system is to look at the normative principles of acceptability of such things. That how do you get acceptance from the user? What do the user know or aware about how do you collect data? What type of information you collect and what do you do with that? So that's the kind of first most important part is ethical to look at. Once the user knows about those things, the user knows that, okay, you are trying to understand my way of what? my personality, or my understanding of this subject, or my skill level of a subject? What is that you are trying to understand? So even the learner knows about those things, the learner won't mind you providing a feedback. Hey, look at this. Based on the data available in the system, we see that your skill level is at this point, whereas the average class skill level is at X point. You are 20 percentile behind the average in the class. So, and then you say, provide feedback, how to improve. Where are the areas the student will not feel bad. So there is the ethical dimension is, there are a lot of normative guidelines that has emerged in the past few years. So I think the system needs to understand those kind of things, and when applying, then that's not an issue at all. And we can provide guidelines, and that's how AI is coming into play a huge role in teaching and learning. But prior consent about understanding about the system's collection of data, what is the data to be collected and how that will be utilized are important. Transparency is the key word here. I hope I responded the questions.
No, it's great. Thank you.
Other questions? Sune, Elliot, Omida.
Actually, I have one question. So I guess that a smart learning environment means that it's kind of technology supported learning environment, I think. So what do you think about the concern that maybe the use of technology, especially VR, AR, really latest technology, may lead to the inequity in education? So what do you think about it?
That's a brilliant question, and I think this is where the policy issues come into play, and that is why we have brought in that policy dimension into it. And if you look at infrastructure component in the framework, equity issue is very much there, and many governments are trying to do increase internet access so that it is equitable, providing free laptops, free smartphones. Those things are going on. So inequity was very much there during the COVID-19 period. Universities, governments decided to transition into online learning without looking into the basic needs that students need to be prepared to use online learning. Earlier days when we were promoting online learning, we were telling students to take a questionnaire. Are you ready for online learning? We didn't do anything like that. We said, oh, everybody come to online learning. Teachers were not prepared, they were not skilled. And then there was infrastructural issues. And these infrastructural issues will continue for a long time to come. So policy, when looking at policy, needs to look into those aspects and develop strategies how those inequities can be reduced. Coming to AR, VR issues, they bring in more challenges at the current development as well. They are not affordable. It's costly. They are mostly in experimental stages, and a lot of things that happen also needs to be checked for. Is it same for all students? Using AR, VR for all students might have issues. Say, for example, for me, it brings in huge challenge because of my eye issues. Okay, so I need an equitable or alternative resource to AR, VR to learn. And we do not have to create that imbalance of learning that somebody, because of an advantage of a learning environment, learns better than anybody else. So equity is a very important question. I'm glad you raised that issue.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that money is a key. Anyway, I think that we need some fund, right? So that's the reason policy are really important. Actually, last pandemic, at that time, actually I have a witness. That's because unfortunately I live in really rich village. So our school system was okay, I think. But as for other community, actually there are some rich family and not rich family. At that time, school decided not to provide any remote education. That's because inequity problem. And then a lot of parents were really, really complaining about. That's because they don't have any choice, right? So that's the problem, I think. Maybe I think that they learned something and then they maybe try something new, but at the time I have witnessed it. So, and then I realized that, the use of technology actually brought a really big gap between, rich family and rich community and not rich community. Yeah, that's really important.
Absolutely right. You're on the dots. I am with you on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Amita took her camera and put it on. So I'm assuming Amita has a question for you. So go ahead, Amita.
Hello, Dr. Mishra. Yes, I have a question. So I want to ask if you had experience working with low poverty, low resource countries, and what was your takeaway from that? The reason I'm asking this question is from Uzbekistan. And our country became independent in 1991. It's 30 years, 35 years old, the country. And our policies toward education is very development stage. And we have issues with low literacy because of governmental policy. For example, we're located in geopolitically important place, and we became independent from Russia, Soviet Union. And so we decided to change our alphabets. And we can't decide which alphabet to use, Cyrillic or Latin, for 35 years. Like policy is not working. People who are linguists, they did big needs analysis, suggestions, submitted it to government, but then the government is not responding to the question or not solving it. So we have two alphabets. People are undecided, so they're sending their children to Russian schools because the alphabet is not clear, Uzbek alphabet. So it's actually working badly. So that's why I'm asking this question. And I relate this terms like transparency, big data, making decision, all to this. And I just want to know if you worked with developing countries and how was your experience? Thank you.
Thank you, Umida. That's a very important aspect. And Uzbekistan, I think it's a nice, beautiful country. And the question that you are asking is very dear to me as well, because at Commonwealth of Learning, we work with mostly less developed countries or developing countries. What we call developing countries. I think except 4 countries, all of them are developing countries for us. So they are resource poor countries in any ways. 32 of the Commonwealth countries are small island states with less than 2 million population. Okay, so it's that context I will share some of the experiences from those kind of things. So definitely some of the things that you talked about are beyond what I can respond, because I do not have that contextual thing. Remember, I talked about previously the context. Context matters. So the solutions for something that we propose or we do has to come out of the context. It is not that you bring an expert or a consultant from outside and that person will bring in some alien proposal and try to implement it. That might happen if you have a huge donor, but donors are also smart these days. They want impact, they want outcomes. So if you want impact and outcomes to happen, local engagement required. So a couple of things that we have been doing in low resource poor countries and we promote is that I will highlight. One, we do not promote technology always. For us, traditional distance education, use of radio, use of television, audio cassettes, video cassettes, the earlier form of things are also equally important. So depending on the ICT context of the country, the teaching and learning environment should be decided. We have enough examples of traditional print-based distance learning and radio utilization in different parts of the world, in Africa, in deserts, in Mongolia, and several places. Examples are there. So those examples, experiences we share with policymakers and tell people that, look, these are the possibilities that you should look at. Don't always look at high tech. Low tech, high touch is also important. In addition to high tech, high touch. So low tech, high touch will also work. That's one approach. Second is that we work with communities. When we work with communities, it works. There are opinion leaders, there are community leaders who become champions of what we promote, and they spread it. They see the value and they spread it. We are outsiders, but local champions, we identify local champions, we work with communities to do that. Say, for example, if I'm going in an institution to work with, I work with champions in the institution, I work with leaders, but I focus on teachers as a whole and put students at the center. So the working in communities help us. That's second. The third important thing is that resources. In resource poor countries or resource poor situation, what is important is that how do you bring in resources? So open educational resources comes into help. So we create open educational resources. They are digital open educational resources, but you can print it out and distribute freely to anyone. So that's the way to reach. Or you can curate resources, put it at one place on the ministry website or create a website. People can go there and download from there those resources. So when resources are poor, that's how people look at that. Oh, I am getting free resources from these things. So I will utilize this. Community members will help you to drive your ideas, policies, implement things. They will do the things. And policymakers need examples, need policy briefs, short guidelines. They don't want to read this 120-page reports. They will need short reports. What is that we'll do? So recently what I did, we prepared a report on a meta-analysis on 20 years of research, second order meta-analysis of 20 years of research in technology application in teaching and learning. So it's also a 100+ page document. Now, we know that things have worked, things are improving, but everybody asks questions. So what we did, we summarized that in a layperson's language into a 4-page foldout that people in the ministry can read it easily, quickly, without spending a lot of time. So we do different approaches in resource poor situations to implement change, make things happen in reality. And it works, by the way. I tell you several examples of implementation. I will show another book to you. This is another book on, it's called Technology Enabled Learning, Policy, Pedagogy, and Practice. You'll see several examples of case studies from low resource poor situation where they have implemented technology enabled learning using open source softwares, open resources. We did this prior to the pandemic, and several institutions reported in this book really did well during the pandemic because their capacities were built. They had the technologies in place. They have done things systematically before the pandemic. They were prepared for taking on the new challenges. So it works. Thank you.
Did that help, Umida?
Yes, very much, a lot. Really, I really appreciate your answers, and I took notes, and these are very helpful thoughts. Yes, we need resources, and actually, we worked with Dr. Bonk during pandemic on writing a book, and I provided professional development workshops to Uzbek colleagues through using Telegram channels and Google Drive. So I wrote about that in my chapter, and that book has all other examples too.
I think Sanjaya has a
Excellent.
copy of the book with Meena, the book with Meena.
Oh, yeah.
So
Excellent.
she's in the book. She's in the book.
Wow, excellent.
You can look that up. I have two questions to end tonight. I don't know if Elliot has one. Elliot, do you have one?
I have nothing. I was mainly interested in his eclectic components, which was really fascinating.
Okay.
Right now, I don't have anything else right now.
Okay. So I have a similar one to that, a shorter one. Then I have a little bit longer. We'll end with the longer one. Can you tell us eclectically what the job of an education director is at a nonprofit? Because our students are finding out that competencies and skills have changed for people in the field. And some of them in my other class are doing dissertations on it, in fact. And I just was on one related to the competencies and skills. So what kind of skills does one need to be a director of education for a significant, I don't know if you're a large nonprofit, but you're a significant nonprofit impacting a large section of the population around the world. And so the skills that you need that's more global in nature might be different from those people who are in a position that's more localized. So what prepared you for this job?
I think I'll share two things. One is the local level and global level. The most important part is at a global level, at a high at an organization like intergovernmental organization. Commonwealth Learning is intergovernmental, meaning that it was created by government. So we are funded by the governments, the Commonwealth 54 Commonwealth, 56 Commonwealth countries. They decide what are things happen. They fund the organization and so on and so forth. So that is, and for example, UNESCO, 195 countries are doing things. So they drive things. So the people in these kind of organizations need a different kind of things. People in non-governmental, non-profit sectors working in education at a global level, they need a different set of things. People at a local level looking into non-profits, they need a different kind of things. One common thing that runs across these three levels is the understanding about how program implementation happen, how change happens, what is called results-based management. How do you look at program interventions? What are the inputs? What are the outputs, and what are the impacts, and what is the impact outcomes, and what are the impacts that you do? A clear understanding of those things are important. The second important thing is the resource allocation, resource generation, and resource optimization. So how do you do is economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. A focus on those kind of things are needed. If all the three levels, these are the basic building blocks where your work has to be results oriented.
Right.
Your skills has to be result oriented. You must show that, okay, I developed a course with Scott and Elaine. How many students are doing it? How many students have benefited it? What benefits they have arrived? How can I quantify those things and tell the value of that course is an example of something to demonstrate. That's one level of thing. The second level of things that is needed, a broad understanding of the the demands on the field. If you do not know the real demands on the field, it's very difficult to design relevant programs.
Right.
So you need to have a broad understanding about the needs on the field. The third important thing is that you also need to have your hands-on on real things that are happening, technological developments per se. No, you must know different solutions, best practices.
Yeah.
No, if you don't know those things, you can't make things happen. So many a times what happens, I may not have done certain things, but I know where it is happening. What is an example of it? I can draw immediate examples from those things and connect the dots to present things. Those things. So if you are looking at this kind of role, somebody is looking at these kind of roles, I think they need to have a broader perspective of education as such covers everything. Different levels of education, different types of educations, from skills education to teacher education, to further education, to lifelong education, adult education, depends on where is the expertise. So you need to have at least expertise in a couple of areas to focus on.
So,
Say, for example, my main focus is ODL, open distance learning and technology enabled learning. Education technology is my core area of things that I do.
right. So a 10-word answer before I go to my other question. What are resources, or is a key resource that you use to keep up with the technologies? Can you, a conference, a summit, a journal, a magazine, a website, can you name one or two things that you go to that keeps you learning in the field?
I think I learn a lot from my social media network. Say, for example, from the LinkedIn.
You're always in LinkedIn. I see you there all the time. Yeah.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I spend a lot of time on those every day. Because the people I follow, they share a lot of information.
They do, yeah.
There are articles, free articles, links to an article, and I go through those things and read a lot. That's one way of things that.
So you're advising my students to friend you in LinkedIn, and then they'll be able to keep up because they'll see on their posts in LinkedIn, they'll see you and what you're reading and so forth. That's or become part of your Twitter account. But LinkedIn is a way in which get Sanjay on LinkedIn. I recommend it highly. I find out a lot from you because you're following people that are real important. So what's the second thing you say?
So I got information from that channel. Second, I have done what I have done in Google Scholar. I have created alerts on my interest areas.
Right.
So every day I get a list of at least 10 to 12 articles where open educational resources as a term. That's something I follow passionately. You can create your own interest area and you get every day that alert free of cost. So you know all the articles that are published. That's the second way of thinking. Third important thing is to follow key institutions and visit regularly their websites, foundations. What are they doing? Like I visit Gates Foundation, I visit Hewlett Foundation. I go and see what are they doing. Of course, I follow them on social media, but still I go and see. I look at the UNESCO sites, and I look at, if I'm interested in climate change, I will look at UNEP and all those kind of things. So look at key players, key institutions, so that you are on top of things. What are the technologies they are using? What are the things they are doing, and exploring these things. Many a time exploring those things, I get advertisements and I try those things and create my free account and explore Pathfinder.
Yeah, I do that too. Yeah.
Recently, I just wanted to tell, video, we are so, video creation has become such a, used to be such a difficult task. Now it has become easier because we are using Zoom and other things. You can create videos easily. Recently, I came across several AI-based tools to create videos by just giving a script. So what do? You type the script that you want to talk to the student and give you this platform. This platform will create a video in Jiffy for you. In seconds or in minutes, you'll get a properly created video. There will be a narrator, no AI narrator, no nice AI narrator, not an agent. It will look like a live person, and it will present with nice related graphics, videos, and everything quickly. So this is a new learning for me. Now I saw this kind of a development. So software development is something that, because I'm in a ed tech field, I try to explore that kind of things as well, to keep myself abreast of new things, including AR, VR. I have dabbled with those kind of tools, experiments. I reach out to CEOs sometime and tell them, look, I'm interested in a demo on these things. No businesses on this, but if I like your product, I can be your champion. I can tell others.
Yeah. So what's the video platform you said that
Several
creates?
of them. Just type on Google AI-based video creators. You'll get there a lot.
Okay. So the question I have for you now, I just in 1 minute or 2 minutes, because we're getting to past time here, but our students have final projects coming up, and so I want you to tell them two things. What makes something smart in terms of a learning environment? So what are the components, or what are things you're looking for? The psychological principles, as well as the what kind of technologies today would you consider to be smart learning environments? And what makes you and me smart within those environments? So, talk to us about smart learning environments, the principles, the technologies, and the overall system that helps make you and I smart.
Yeah, that's very difficult. Good. I will try to allude to that.
Just a short answer. Don't have to don't give us a dissertation. I'll let you write it later.
Yeah, I'll tell you that if it is environment, okay, if we are creating a learning environment, smart learning environment, so everybody needs to be smart in that way. It's not just technology. It's not just the learner has to be smart, or the teacher has to be smart. Everybody needs to be playing smart, in a sense that you must be focusing on the learning objectives. You must be focusing on activities to achieve the learning objectives. You must be using technology tools appropriately. Not just because you have access to a technology, you want to bring in that technology, etc. So once you look into that, and then you are looking at the competencies assessment of those things. How are you doing those assessments? How are you certifying those assessments? How are you sharing those assessment skills? How are you providing the feedback to the learner? So it's an overall thing that makes smart in where the learner is enjoying the learning. Again, I'll come back to enjoying, efficient, engaging, effective, and ethical. So if you have those key characteristics, and if you are able to justify that this is my system that I have designed, this is how it works, then you are in a best smart environment.
So Christian's point, if we can get Christian or Sunmei for next week to show us painter.ai or Synthes, how do you even say that, Sanjay? Synthesia, maybe we have time next week. We have a guy who writes for Inside Higher Ed named Ray Schroeder. You may have read him in Inside Higher Ed. He's got good articles. He's written a couple on AI and education. Yeah. He's my good friend from the Illinois at Springfield, University of Illinois, Springfield. So he'll be coming next week. And then I'll talk about smart learning environments, but maybe we have time for about 15 minutes to show some things about these two tools. So thanks, Christian. And Sunmei, if you'd like to show something as well, that'd be great. I want to thank Sanjaya for helping us tonight understand smart learning environments and helping us understand the article that's been assigned for this week, so that you can read it more expeditiously, intelligently, and smartly. we can all be smart about our readings this week on smart learning environments. I'm interested in to be reading. Now, I've read your discussion post from last week. I started reading Group A or Group D last night. I'll get to the Group B, C, and D if SUNY hasn't closed it yet. I'll get to that right after class tonight and give you all feedback on those. So again, let's give Sanjay a round of applause on this. It's a second time for him to come to my class in the last year. He was in R678 in the spring, gave a talk about, about Creative Commons and about OER, and it was brilliant. And tonight was brilliant as well. I will ask him one thing, if he can share his slides with us, and I can share with the class maybe. So we'll do that. I am going to stop the recording to the class.